Hello fellow engineers and welcome back to Factorio. I'm just getting over being sick, so my voice may sound a little bit different than normal, so apologize for that in advance, but I wanted to talk about Friday Facts number 442 before we get the next Friday Facts coming out. So this one is controversial for specifically the quality mechanics that are getting removed. I'm personally excited about it. I'll tell you why I'm excited about it and why I agree fundamentally with the change. That being said, let's talk about all the other minor quality of life changes that are coming in. And we'll start with those. So first off, we're going to have the ability for pump jacks and for burner miners to be able to be flipped. This is cool. This is confusing for a lot of people in the early game or people who are just getting into Factorio for the first time. Not everyone actually has got, 8,000 plus hours as is recorded on Steam. And I've got, not running Steam here, so I've got probably 10,000 hours on Factorio at this point. For me, I know what can be flipped and what can't be flipped. And for someone who's coming into the game for the first time, when they can go and they can see that, hey, pretty much every single other thing that's in the game has the ability to be flipped. And then you go and get to the pump jacks and you go, well, why can that not be flipped? That's confusing. So if every other thing, especially in 2.0, with the chemical buildings being able to be flipped, why is it that someone might ask the question, why can't I flip these? Well, now you can. So that's a nice just consistency change that I'm excited about seeing that's coming into the game. Additionally, the burner miners are also going to receive that same thing. Not a huge change. I'm not usually in the burner empire for a very long period of time, but the main things that are exciting about this is just that, now it's more of a consistency thing. If you look at now, though, too, here, you're going to see a little bit of a sneak peek of the next item here. You're going to see that the arrows are now indicating that they are now going on the inside lane. This one's going on the right side, and this one's going on the left side. So hasn't actually been historically possible yet when you're unloading directly to a straight belt. So what does that mean? So there's now drop lane indication on perpendicular belts. So you can now see where it's going to drop on the belt itself. So you can see this now. This was always a mechanic that you would always unload to the right-hand side in the direction of travel. Now you're able to do this on the right or the left side. So that's a nice thing because now any design, you don't have to think about that mechanic when designing one half of the build. Now you can design it and flip it, and it will work just as it did on the left side or the right side. And typically the way that I design things, I design half the build on the left-hand side to produce, let's say, 120 items per second that I need of a science. And then I just flip it to the right-hand side, and then I have the exact same design on the other one. So now I'm going to have to rewire a little bit how I design things. But this is a kind of a very nice quality of life because this impacts inserters as well, where you can choose which side they're going to unload to. So this is nice for trains, but also it allows these kinds of builds to be perfectly flippable. So that's a really nice change because what you're going to see a lot in my videos is, and we'll go to my staging area over here just and have the bots build things out. If you go to here and we go and get some of our, let's say our straight belt here, and then let's just go grab an inserter like this, and we'll go and simulate the input with something else. So typically right now what's happening is you can always only unload on the right-hand side in the direction of travel, and you can't unload on the left-hand side. So if I have a design that is dependent on this, and then I have another material that's going to come in from the left-hand side, so let's just grab something else that's coming in here, something that I know that I'll have in the network here, rather like this. Let's say I'm going to be unloading like this. This design is not flippable, right? Because they're going to both get blocked here, and you see how it gets mixed. Now, with the change, when you flip this would act exactly the same way as it does on the left-hand side as on the right-hand side. And more so, the nice thing that's going to come from this, you're going to see this a lot in my mega bases, is that I use these 3-to-1 stack inserter unloaders. So a very common thing, because the stack inserters, the legendary ones, can make 80 per second that they can unload to a belt. A design like this, and we'll go and bring this in here just to showcase this, where you would have these three are going to be enough to go and supply 240 per second. But if I flip this to the other side, you would notice that this is not going to be able to work anymore, right? Because it's only going to unload onto this right-hand side. So the difference is now, by being able to choose this is on the left side, left side, left side, this would actually be able to be flipped completely and would work. So it allows you for something that is not immediately obvious, but is going to be now available to us, is that we can now design builds that are going to be even as cursed as this, where you have these really compact inserters and you don't have to anymore care when they're unloading with the 3-to-1 output here, that the particular orientation, because you can now choose which lane they're going to go on. So it allows for a lot more flexibility and a lot less cursed things like I'm doing here, where I'm having to go and snake around and make it go down, all because of that right-hand side mechanic. So it's going to change a lot the way that I design things, all purely because of this new mechanic that's coming out. So that's a pretty exciting thing for me personally. So next, there's a bunch of new graphics settings. So what are going to be the new graphics? So what's coming in is they've made a bunch of changes to individual planets, but one of them that's coming out is flamethrowers. So flamethrowers now are going to have the ability to have diagonal flamethrower turrets. I particularly like that because on Gleba, I still use those quite a bit for all my outposts. So does it make a huge change? Not really immediately for me, but it would be nice to have these perfectly on the diagonal here to make this a more rounded object here. So for the people who are more fans of circular bases, or specifically who want to go and make those glorious hexagons that you see all over the Factorio subreddit, now you're going to be able to also make your flamethrowers aligned with that. So for me, who started on a Death World here on Novice, or like in this particular playthrough, it's definitely a nice thing to be able to utilize a new orientation for the flamethrowers themselves. So I'm excited for that. So planet improvements, they've increased some lore. So now they're adding more of these, the ruins, onto the actual oil itself. So it gives you this illusion of that the oil is kind of just over the tops of this original Fulgora civilization, and the islands are just the tops of these giant mountains that we're seeing. So we're only kind of scratching the surface of this actual planet. So for modding and for other for people who are going to go and create other kinds of mods for the game, you could imagine a mod where you can explore the depths of Fulgora and the original planet. So that would be kind of a cool thing that you can now do, and it just adds to the lore that there is more to explore in Fulgora, and we're only seeing the scratching the surface. Very cool. This is a nice change. So just in general, Gleba feels a lot like Novice because these rocks are the original like rocks that you see on Novice, but just were quickly repainted because they just didn't have enough time when they originally released the 2.0 version of the game to go and create their own sprites for them. So now they have them. So now we have our own dedicated sprites for these rocks that are going to be on Gleba. So that's a nice thing. It makes it a little bit more obvious what they are. And so for a new player, when they land on Gleba for the very first time, you're going to get this impression that this is a completely different biome that is like completely different and far detached from Novice that you know. Same thing they're doing over on Vulcanus. They're creating a lot more of these volcanic rock structures. So you're seeing a lot more of, they're breathing some life into them. They look a lot more like an actual volcanic rock that has been created that's going to be on the surface. And so just the inspiring that to make it look more like, yeah, this is a lava rock compared to what you would normally see on Novice. So that's a nice little small, just making overall, just keep in mind, right? 2.1 is meant to be a quality of life change and a polishing of Factorio, and it isn't supposed to completely introduce totally new mechanics or totally new design philosophies and things like that. So this is all just a quality of life and a lot of polishing, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. So it's right along with the lines of what the expectations are. So they made it also change the demolishers. So I know Feargal, who was their graphic designer, took a lot of time to make a new version. And after experimenting, they landed on one which retains the volume and has some extra stony plating. So now when you look at this before and the new graphic, it's a little bit sharper. And then overall, these things are going to look scarier when you first get on Vulcanus for the first time. Additionally, the thing that I like is now the carcasses receive also that kind of, they look like the original skeletal remains of the original Demolisher. So that's nice for those that, and they call it out here, for those that are going to be wanting to create a shrine for them. Now it looks a lot more like the original Demolisher. It always bothered me a little bit that they just look like rocks that you would find on Novice, or not on Novice, but on Vulcanus. And like, why is that the case? And I always kind of like wondered that. Now it's like really obvious this is its own kind of sprite. It looks different. It's obvious what it is. And that's just a nice like rounding up of those changes. Another thing, just hats off to Factorio, the developers at Woob. Going and always making sure that you are not being expensive on VRAM is great, because not everyone's going to have the computer that I have to go and run Factorio. And mine's probably one of the best computers you can build. And so I'm not going to ever have an issue with VRAM usage. But the fact that they are being so cognizant of older PCs and maintaining backwards compatibility is such a nice thing that you don't quite see very often from any developers at all, where they really care. They just say like, hey, you got to be on the latest gen hardware, and that's all you got. Because that's all they're testing on. The fact they're still testing on older stuff means that, and hats off to Feargal, that's kind of hard to go and create these kinds of sprites that both A, are directional agnostic. That was one thing that they had to do because this thing can move in all directions, but also is cheap on VRAM. So very, very cool to see. All right, so here's the big change, quality updates. One, this is kind of a small thing, but it opens up, and I haven't seen anyone else talk about this. The reason their quality used to be something that was a hard dependency on Space Age, so which meant that you have to enable quality in order to play Space Age. Not everyone wants to play with quality. So that was one thing that also exists is, let's say, and the main thing that's happening is the recyclers it was wrapped under the quality module. So for people, now that the recycler is going to be in its own tiny separate mod, what this means is that, let's say you don't want to play Space Age at all and you want to play just the vanilla game with quality, or just with a recycler. The nice thing about this is that in the past, the only way that you could play with quality in a vanilla world, so without having like Space Age and Fulgora, is you could still have quality modules, but you couldn't unlock the recycler because it was stuck behind Fulgora. So if you were playing a vanilla run, you had no ability to get rid of all of the extra materials, all your quality 1, quality 2, quality 3 materials if you're trying to get legendary in a vanilla world. So what this unlocks is now the ability for you to bring in quality and recyclers into your kind of vanilla world, where you're only going to be playing on novice, and you don't want to go to space. And in fact, I could argue that that's kind of what I've been doing for a year, because I've only been optimizing novice altogether. So in some ways, that's probably a run that I'll do one time, is just a quality plus like a vanilla Factorio run with quality and with recyclers, and then building a mega base there that is just the sciences that are on novice specifically. So this allows you to do that, increases the flexibility of how you want to play the game. So I'm all for that. Here's a big change, space casinos. So they're removing the quality modules. Big deal. I know a lot of people are going to get really mad about that, and they're saying like, oh, you've removed the ability for me to have these beautiful, what are these called here? My space casinos, right? This has been a core concept for over the last like year and a half that Space Age has been around, is that everyone just knows that, hey, you want to get quality materials, you want to get them fast, you just go and build yourself a nice space casino, and you have all the reprocessing modules. So what's going to happen in the latest version is you're not going to be able to put quality modules in here anymore. Now, the developers confirmed this as well. This only impacts the reprocessing. This does not impact the crushing recipes. Why does that matter? Well, originally, before you have any asteroid productivity researched, these are actually worse in order for yield that you're going to get, because you're only going to get a 20% chance of getting metallic asteroids back. Now, once you actually have 300% productivity, this is actually an 80% chance, because you get 4 productivity rolls for every single individual metallic asteroid chunk that you put in. So there's actually a higher chance that you're going to get that metallic asteroid chunk back. So it's actually the same odds using the crushing recipe over the reprocessing recipe once you have the absolute late game. So for late game, it doesn't actually change anything. You just have to deal with the byproducts of iron ore that you're going to get now. So I created a video not too long ago where I talked about what is going to be the best for UPS in terms of the quality of sciences you're going to target. And this is the fring that we created from that video series. And in that particular video too, I talked about it where we were only focusing on using the reprocessing recipe altogether. Now that's going to change in the moment you're going to load up in 2.1. Most likely, all these quality modules are going to be removed, and you're going to have to redesign this thing from scratch. So kind of in preparation for 2.1, if you are using legendary or a higher quality space science, you're going to have to go and rethink how you're going to design that. So I'm excited because we already have an answer on which of the sciences before this got removed was best, which quality was best for space science. So I'm happy that we already did that. And then now the difference is going to be you're just going to see a different design philosophy because it's kind of in some ways better because with not the reprocessing recipe, but specifically when we're talking about the crushing recipes, the nice thing about the crushing recipe is that you're always going to get guaranteed that individual item that you're trying to upcycle back. So you can kind of a lot more tailor. You have to be a little bit more specific about what are you going to be bringing in as your inputs from the top because you're not going to be able to roll the other items. But it's just going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but still very doable for late game. Now, for early game, it kind of completely destroys the idea that has been floating around that is the only way, quote unquote, to get quality materials, which is a space casino. This is boring to me. You slap this up into the actual, like you create a spaceship like this, and then you go and you make everything in rare, then you make everything in legendary, and then you continue to go from there. And I have space platforms that I've created over time that specifically do that. So if we look at some of, let's see, I have harvester ships. Yeah. So this was my original space casino that I created. That's all rare materials. I would step this up after I went and created this, and I would go into epic. And then you just continue to swap everything out, all the materials, all the components, until eventually you had something that would make your final all legendary materials. And then you would just pump this out. This is so trivial. This is all you have to do. And you can see here that out of like the quality upcyclers that I have nothing else because this is the only thing I've ever done for mid and late game. Is like there's no other reason to do anything because early game, having something that gives you a 80% chance of getting one of these products back without having to do any research at all is so much better than the 25% chance that you get out of a recycler to get a material back. And if we're talking about this early game, this is actually now going to be objectively worse because you're only going to get a 20% chance to get this oxide asteroid chunk back compared to the 25% chance you get out of a recycler. So until you get, like I said, significantly more expensive research, this doesn't even become a viable solution. So it's only in the late game where this becomes, or the ultra late game where this becomes viable. So I like that change for that reason, because what it means is that now on Vulcanus, you're not going to have a drop everything from space and then just produce Omega everything that you want here on for all the legendary components, materials that you have. Now we're going to have more like quality recycling underground pipes and pipes to go and produce iron, right? You're going to have a lot more of these more interesting builds that don't exist here, but will now in the future for other save files and things. And it also makes things on Gleba a lot more viable in terms of going and using Gleba to actually go and use some of their recipes, like going and making like this. This is still going to allow you to put quality modules in here. So making iron bacteria cultivation might be an interesting mechanic for you to go and try. That wouldn't have been explored at all, and I haven't seen anyone really explore this. And in terms of really using it at scale, because you always had access to space. Always super easy to use. I love it. It means that we're going to have a lot more interesting designs. And one thing specifically in here that I'm going to call out that I'm happy about is that this is the only change they're making. They are leaving low density structures completely alone. That's a really good thing, because one of the only reasons that we have on Novice, when we're going and thinking about, like, my whole entire save file was made using uncommon science, was one of the original designs that I had, or philosophies that I had. The only way for you to go and make LDS in mass, at least practically, was by leveraging the fact that you could continue to go and make plastic bars. That's all you had to really put in, and you would always get low density structures out of it. And so that actually makes utility science a much more viable end game solution for with uncommon as the quality that you want. If they remove that, it would kind of kill uncommon science or quality science altogether. So I'm happy that it's there as an option that makes it more interesting for us to explore. And you're going to see too, when I release the video for utility science, that there's actually doing the quote unquote LDS shuffle or recycling LDS to go and get steel and copper is actually a better method for UPS, for utility science specifically, for making uncommon science. So because it's so incredibly useful for the late game or for mega basing in general, I'm happy that that mechanic is still going to stay in the game. because they're making all the other things much harder to go and produce because we don't have space casinos anymore. So at least in the general sense of how we're used to them today. That's all I'm going to say on it. I'm excited about it. It means we're going to have new possibilities, and I'm super stoked to go and design new buildings altogether from that are going to come from this. All right, let's move on to quality trains. So main thing that's happening now, if you're looking at the quality trains, this is actually pretty exciting. I'm again going to benefit from this because I use trains on Gleba. Don't recommend it, but I use it. So we've got locomotives. Our acceleration is now with power and higher top speed, so they're going to be faster now with when you get legendary material with legendary trains for those. So that's going to be exciting. Then we're also going to have cargo wagons are going to stack up to 100 with legendary, so 2.5x multiplier. Fluid wagons are going to increase their storage tank volume, and the artillery wagons are also going to increase their shooting range. So also I was scouring the public Discord for Factorio, or the main Discord, and it looks like not only fluid wagons are getting it, but also the tanks themselves. So like the fluid tanks are also going to get a buff, so they're going to get an increase. So that's exciting. So when you're looking at this now here for rolling stock, I think one of the main reasons that they had was that it was very difficult initially to use an upgrade planner. So what's going to happen now is the trains are going to wait at their current destination that they're at, and they'll wait for a bot to come over and upgrade them. This was kind of a technical challenge of why they couldn't do it, but what that means now is that you can just go crazy wild upgrading all the trains, and they should all eventually be upgraded without any schedule mishaps or manual work. So that's exciting to see that this is coming. What that means for me practically is that I'm going to be able to reduce the number of trains that I have here on Gleba, and actually will kind of increase by proxy the freshness, because these trains are going to be able to just go so much faster now, because the acceleration which is right now not something that exists, but the max speed and the acceleration power are now going to scale with quality. So that's exciting. So it means we're going to have a lot. I can benefit from it immediately in my particular build here, and I'm excited to go and revamp a little bit Gleba with the new quality train. So that's exciting. So fluid system updates. So one of the things that they're changing now is they're saying the 2.0 fluid system was rushed. So this is by Rhaegar, who was the developer who was originally creating the fluid system. And one of the most notorious things, I'll skip over some of this stuff. The main things that are changing is you had some really weird things where you were able to pass any kind of fluid. There was no filtering, and that's obviously incorrect. So they've redesigned it. So now it's going to prevent that from happening, and it will make it obvious that, hey, you're mixing fluids. This isn't going to be allowed, right? But the fluid flow scaling is the biggest change that I'm the most excited about. One of the hard-coded changes they had was that you only could emit 100 per tick in that fluid system, or about 6,000 per second. And practically, you never ever would hit this, because as the pressure increases in the fluid system, you weren't able to actually go and output 6,000 per second. So that's where you'll see a lot here on Novice, is that I have all of these fluid producers, right, like this, where I'm only really capping them and getting enough beacons to hit 5,000 per second, because I'm practically always going to have too much back pressure in the actual molten fluid here, and you're going to get to a situation where you're never going to get the true like 6,000 per port output that you would want. So in essence, what is changing is now you're going to be able to use a lot less buildings, because you're going to be now unrestricted. And so this diagram is perfect, where you can see there's always back pressure here on the outputs, slowly draining it, especially in this particular recipe where it has a very high amount of steam output. And then now with this change, this is kind of brilliant. Now it's going to be that it's always going to immediately be able to output everything that's coming out of this. Quote unquote, it just works, right? So now you're seeing here, these are always, this is now low, and then the sink, the thing that the source here that is sinking into this other building, the sink is the one that always has the back pressure of fluid output. So it's huge. I'm really excited to go and test this out once 2.1 is officially here, for us to go and see how much fluid can we really get out of one of these buildings, and is it really true that it's completely unlimited? So that's pretty exciting. And last but not least, there's a new pipe GUI and pipe circuit connection. So now you can connect to a pipe. You don't need to connect to a tank anymore. And you can read all of the contents of that particular fluid. I don't know what this visualized pipeline does, but that's kind of interesting that that's a check mark there. I'm assuming it has something to do with the fact that when you hover over it, you can kind of visualize where it's going. Maybe that just keeps it on all the time. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but that's pretty cool to see. Now, there's an Easter egg in here that's very much being shown here. Look at the circuit connection. And they're even saying this here. You may be able to spot a new feature as well. There's a red and there's a green output. I don't know what this strictly means. I would speculate, though, knowing the way that the Factorio developers create things, to have a more, like we said, this whole thing is about making cohesion. We're flipping, for crying out loud, the ability to go and flip these, right, to make that consistent. So if the circuit connection has a red and a green toggle, potentially what that means is we'll actually have red and green toggles for everything. So we'll have to see. Maybe they'll announce that in the next FFF. I'm hoping that they do so we can talk about it more, but that seems like an exciting thing. So otherwise, though, I do know some things that are going to be happening with 2.1 that are going to change a lot of things, particularly related to this channel, that I can't disclose yet, but there are some optimizations for certain buildings that I'm really excited to talk about once 2.1 comes here. I've even had the chance to go and benchmark and test some things that I know are going to be better for UPS in the future. So I'm excited to talk about those once they come out in an FFF. So I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there without putting any spoilers out. So very exciting stuff coming in 2.1. I'm super excited to talk about the next FFF, and we'll probably see that then tomorrow. So in other words, that's everything from me. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have been here for a while, thank you for your subscription and your support, and I will talk to you in the next video. See ya.